Thank you to Professor Guerra for his speech and to Arianna for reading it. So, while thanking the speakers who come before me for their welcoming addresses and important contribution to the opening of the debate, I would like to introduce the works of the conference by explaining the reason laying behind the choice of the title, Early Childhood Education Beyond the Crisis, Social Justice, Solidarity, and Children's Rights. In time of economic crisis like the one we are living in, early childhood education and care is at a crossroad. In a context where welfare state resources are progressively reduced and social inequality are on the rise, early childhood services are increasingly being conceptualized as the solution for fighting poverty and social inequalities. This trend is clearly traceable in the recent policies promoted by the European Commission, as well as by many other international organizations funding research in the field of early childhood education and care. Over the last few years, this has determined a progressive shift in the way academic research is conceptualized and carried out in the early childhood field. The increased influence of social investment and human capital paradigms becomes every day more visible. This is attested by the unprecedented proliferation of studies that evaluate the impact of early childhood education and care services by measuring their contribution to the economy in terms of return of investment, children's academic achievement, and future employability. The number of such studies has been growing exponentially in Italy as well, despite the fact that early childhood pedagogy and research in our country has traditionally been marked by very different concerns, as Marilena Pilati and Luigi Guerra eloquently explained in their speech. While acknowledging that such studies may act as powerful policy drivers for sustaining the investment in early childhood services, especially in time of economic crisis, as pedagogical researchers who work in close contact with educators, children, and family, we envisaged many potential risks in the increased dominance of social investment and human capital paradigm. The first risk we envisaged is that the construction of children as future workers and profitable assets, rather than as younger citizens bearers of rights, might increasingly legitimize the tendency to neglect child-specific needs, potentialities, and multiple ways of learning in favor of economical rationality. The counterproductive effects induced by these international trends have already been documented in several studies, attesting the progressive schoolification of early childhood education and care practices. The second risk we envisaged is that the emphasis placed on children and as coming adults and human beings might progressively delegitimize their voices and perspective in educational research and practice. If children are not recognized as competent human beings here and now, how can they be recognized as experts of their own lives and protagonists of their own learning processes? The third risk we envisaged is that the increasing dominance of evidence-based approaches to research and practice may lead to dismiss important elements that are essential features of pedagogical quality in early childhood services, such as practitioners' reflection on children's learning experiences and democratic participation of families. As pointed out by distinguished scholars such as Peter Moss, the narrow focus of predetermined outcomes, which is foregrounded by much evidence-based research framed within human capital and social investment paradigms, is gradually contributing to marginalize children's, parents, and professional voices from the debate on the educational and social function of early childhood services within society. Therefore, we decide to take the opportunity of this year's ISERA conference in Bologna to reopen a public forum for discussion by giving voices to those alternative discourses about social justice, solidarity, children's rights, and participatory democracy that are more and more rarely heard in contemporary debate in early childhood education and care. In this sense, the choice of Bologna as hosting cities of the conference was not a coincidence. Some of you might be familiar with the history that gave origin to early childhood education and care services in Bologna, as well in Reggio Emilia, Modena, and many other cities of the region of Emilia-Romagna in northern central Italy. It is a story of civic engagement and struggles, where educators, parents, especially women, and citizens were involved in collective movements for regenerating society after the dark times of fascism and war. By drawing on this historical, cultural, and political legacy, we would like to take the opportunity given this year's conference to relaunch the debate on multiple meanings and values that early childhood education assumes in time we are living in, that, as it was back then, is marked by complexity and contradiction. In fact, in this time characterized by multiple crises on a global scale, there are not only economic but also social, political, cultural, and we would dare to say humanitarian. This time, it's a time in which we live. The lives of children and family are increasingly affected by experiences of poverty, marginalization, stigmatization, and exclusion. But we argue it's also a time in which the richness of socio-cultural diversity can open new spaces for mutual learning and experimentation, a time in which the never-ended struggle for claiming civil rights can take the form of resistance to dominant discourses, of educational activism and political advocacy. As Onorevole Puglisi passionately explained, the process that has brought to the law drawn down from people's initiative to become part of the national reform as integrated system of 06 services has been the result of long-standing process of advocacy and negotiation, which entitle an ongoing confrontation with stakeholders on one side and a strong political commitment on the other. Therefore, the time we are living in, it's also a time of potentialities, when new space and possibilities for change can be created, as things can no longer be thought as one formerly thought them. And as academics, researchers, or practitioners who are engaged in pedagogical work with children, families, and communities, we cannot be exempted from the responsibility of taking a stance and being courageous in reaffirming children's rights, furthering democratic education, and claiming for a more equal and just society. We are sure that the contribution of the distinguished keynote speakers who honored us with their presence at the conference will serve as thought-provoking inspiration for re-envisaging educational practice and empowering policy advocacy within our early childhood research community. Our hope for this year's conference is that the numerous parallel sections during which symposium and poster presentations are held will become authentic fora for problematizing and debating, for sharing reflection and engaging into dialogue, for learning from each other and bringing together multiple perspectives, enriching the diversity of early childhood pedagogies and approaches all over the world. And now, I would like to conclude the welcoming addresses by thanking once again all the speakers for their inspiring addresses and asking them to take their seat so we can proceed with the conference and leave the floor to the ISRA President, Chris Pascal, will open the plenary session. Thank you. Chris, the floor is yours.